Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Can I ask a favor? Can everyone just move in a bit? There's just a few people already standing. If you can just move in just so that can make some way for some seats for some people to come in, that would be great. Thank you. And if we can ask to get some more chairs brought in, that would be great as well. Maybe another sort of 20 more chairs. All right, welcome everyone to Private Capital 2025. I'm going to give you a bit of a debrief as to how this event was created and the sort of thematics of it. First thing I'm going to do to kick off is I just want to give a big shout out to the Wholesale investor team. Said people have no idea what we've pulled off in the last month, which is pretty much almost a miracle from an effort perspective. But to give you some idea, in the last month, this time last month, we were hosting Emergence in London, where we had 380 people turn up to our conference in London. Then a week after that, we were hosting Emergence Dubai, which was the first time ever that we've gone to Dubai and was just an unbelievable success. We initially were expecting 125 people. We ended up with 250 people, and they were all European fund managers, UK fund managers, Asian, and also from the Middle East as well. So incredible success, and we're so bullish about opportunities sort of in Dubai for Australian investors and Australian companies. And then obviously, you see today, over the last 2 days, we've hosted a capital raising boot camp over the last 2 days. And just because that wasn't enough doing stuff across 3 different countries, we also had an office move in the middle of it. And everyone knows how much fun office moves are at the same time. So it's been a massive period for us as a company in this last one. And then also hosting today, I think is a really important time to be looking at this space. And I sort of outlined, you'll probably notice that there's 3 key thematics that drive through today's session. And, in this sort of, to give you a bit of an introduction to the journey as to how we sort of got to this thematic, and all you guys have your own investment themes, your own cases for why you're focused on what you're focused on. How we got here was 2 years ago at this event, we had Cameron Blanks from PEP come and talk at the event. And he gave a great introduction to talk about, how much private markets is going to be expanding across the next decade. And he talked about how the private markets is going to be expanding to a $30 trillion opportunity over the next 10 years. And he also highlighted at that same time some of the issues that were taking place with exchanges around the world. And it was interesting to note for me when I did my own sort of research to find out that effectively it's basically in the US, for example, listed companies that are at 53% of what their peak was 20 years ago. Then also to find out sort of through the AFR where they sort of did some research, and effectively the ASX now sits at the same amount of listings as what it had in 2006. And so you can see that around the world, there's this trend to move away from the listed markets with a focus on the private market side. And likewise, if you go and have a look at the upcoming listings on the ASX website, you'll find there just isn't too many there. So private markets then become a dominant theme. Now, for us as a company, most people knew us. If you go back 3 years ago, everyone knew us purely from, the sort of innovation startup side, even though we've been showcasing property and fund managers since 2012. So that was my first introduction. That set a light bulb off inside of me to realize that the innovation market, whilst it's an area I'm super passionate about, and I'll explain the panel session today as well, was really actually quite small in comparison to the true market opportunity that's available to all of us in the private market space. So you would have noticed the messaging from WI over the last 2 years that goes around all those areas, whether it be private credit, funds management, property, and then also now business succession. And how that come about was I basically had a shareholder come on board. His name is Jim Lowry, and his background was sort of from private equity, but he's moved into basically in part of a business called the Valoop Exchange, which you're also going to hear from their ANZ CEO, Giles, today, which many of you may even know in this room. And he really opened up my eyes where he talked about this is going to be the greatest wealth transition, in history. And for me, I thought that the greatest wealth transition was going to be from the baby boomers to their kids. That's where I was sort of thinking about it from. How do I think about my investment thesis, or how do I think about my business case? And so that changed a lot for me. And when I did further research, it was then discovering that this market, there's going to be 400,000 companies in Australia alone that need to go through succession over the next decade. More than that, the value of those companies, it's a $3.5 trillion transition. And it's interesting to note at the same time that innovation had its own sort of challenges, that this has become an area where a lot of the deal makers and a lot of the investors that I was dealing also started to make this a priority for themselves as a focus area. Likewise, at the same time, you notice there's a lot of trends coming out of the US and also in Australia where it's entrepreneurship through acquisition. There's even been groups set up throughout universities where they're focused on acquiring existing businesses and then adding a layer of innovation to it. So this has become quite a substantial opportunity. And then likewise, on the private credit side, to know that effectively there's about 200 billion in funds under management through in private credit, and that's expected to grow over the next few years to between 350 to 400 billion. So that really sets the baseline for the thesis of everything that sort of comes from today's event. And as I said, I got asked last week, what are the value points that investors, get from Wholesale Investor? And I sort of articulated it in 3 different ways. One, we all know the first part, networking. You guys love a good chat with each other, right? Second one is that we're always trying to provide insights in some direction, but provide access to the people that are in this space, working in it, operating and investing and allocating money so that you can understand their investment thesis and make up your own mind how it relates to your portfolio and how you want to act, etc. And then the last one is the direct access to opportunities. So in the room on the left, you'll obviously notice, so this is the presentation room. All sort of catering and all the companies that are being featured today are going to be in the room next door. So you'll have an opportunity to talk with them, throughout the day. Now, the one part that I didn't mention in that, as far as what I see as the biggest opportunity for the next decade, is the early stage VC area. And for me, that area has always been a minefield, and I've always admired the people who are in it because, often you sort of meet super early companies and, there's just such a, it's just such a different thing when, you're sort of meeting companies really, really early. There was something interesting that I noticed at Emergence was when we did the venture capital panel session. Who came to Emergence, by the way? Okay, perfect. During the venture capital session, I noticed that the fund managers were a little bit lower energy than what normally they would be. And it was also interesting to note last week where the sort of announcement around the Airwallex deal where sort of Blackbird and Airtree went in for the first time into Airwallex in their Series F, which was also interesting. And you just wonder, you think about what are the signals that sit around this? My thesis, I did a meetup at the start of this year, and I had a thesis that I think that for companies that are building businesses now, for the founders that are building businesses that are AI led. Now, I know that word, people feel it's hype. I actually don't think so at all. If you experience it every single day, I think it's just not been articulated enough how much it changes a lot of areas. And yes, there's going to be mistakes along the way. But what's really interesting is everyone talks about sort of AI from how they're putting it in their product. The part that I think is really interesting to talk about is how people are using AI in their business. And I just can't understand how if an investor's going into a company, how they can't be asking the company about what does their tech stack look like internally and what are they using from an efficiency and a productivity perspective, because right now, it is still the most unfair advantage for a company to be an AI-led business or a software, and by the way, software and AI in how they actually use it, because to me, I just use the example of someone lining up for a 100-meter sprint, and they've literally got a jetpack on them, and they've got the sort of Blade Runner shoes as well. Like you're just giving yourself such an unfair advantage to win in a race of building business. And also, likewise, I've noticed that the amount that startups are raising has dropped significantly. 3 years ago, everyone was looking to raise 5 to 10 million. Now everyone's looking to raise $1 million. People are raising a lot less. And also, what I'm really looking forward to in this sort of early stage VC panel is I would love to understand how they're thinking about that sort of productivity, because most of the founders I've been speaking to, the way they're thinking about things is they're thinking about how, number one, they can, effectively, if they want to increase productivity in their business, their first thought isn't, how can I hire someone? Their first thought is what tools are available? And what's super interesting, if you notice the way in which AI products are being built, they're not being built just as products to solve problems. They're literally being identified as products to take out roles. And that becomes interesting, right? Because it then becomes who, I think someone made the great statement of, you either basically utilize AI or you get taken over by it. And I think that's whether that's a team member, whether that's a company, it doesn't matter. That's the reality and the way we have to think about it. So today, the three key thematics, that we really wanted to provide around is help understand that business succession area more. And it's something we're going to be talking about a lot. Then also the early stage VC panel section. Obviously, there's a focus on AI. There's a focus on product-led businesses. This, it's being curated in a very specific way because it's some of the observations that I'm seeing. And then likewise, on the alternative part, the other thing that I've really noticed is that for the family offices, there's a lot more active family offices that are providing access to high net worths to get access to some of their deal flow and the opportunities that they're participating in. So for me, part of what we do with doing this is we want to provide access to that and make it simple for you to actually participate. And then also one of the, in the all sort of alternative part as well, is then, and obviously the private credit side, that's been sort of well documented over the last 2 years. The really fortunate thing for us, and you'll see this today, we've got some great companies that are featuring their sort of opportunities today that give you guys access to high yield. They're all been experienced. They've all been doing, the majority have been doing this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Guys like Acura are incredibly well known, sort of in their sort of ecosystem and in their world. Guys like Dan, who's going to be one of the first presenters from Pindar, has actually built and sold a business in this space. So you got some incredible people that are operating, and this is their first time actually sort of providing direct access for investors, outside of their existing sort of networks to actually participate. By the way, can we actually get some more chairs brought in as well, Plank? That'd be great. For me, I said, I started this year with my thesis, and of course, it's, by the way, since Emergence, it's obviously been a wild time with tariffs and, all the sort of global aspects. I don't really expect that noise to stop too much soon. But effectively, interest rates have come down. There is obviously pressure to try and bring interest rates down more, but it's interesting to see how they sort of go in the US. But the reality is, it's still set up from a foundation perspective where you as the investor or you as a business, whatever hat that you're wearing today, whether it's investor, business builder, advisor, etc., there's an opportunity for that access to high growth on the innovation side where companies can actually can launch and get to profitability so much faster than what they could do previously, and also go to market a lot faster. The access to growth, right, through sort of private equity, business succession, etc. And then likewise, the access to yield. And the other thing I found super interesting, someone's got the party started. So, and then the other thing I found really interesting is by doing all these conferences and running these different panel sessions, there was a comment that Chamath from the All In mentioned about how private credit was starting to eat private equity, right, as far as getting access to opportunities. The part he missed was it's also doing the same to venture capital, because it's interesting now how many different sort of product solutions are coming out that are non-bank lending related that are also providing access to returns in going into, early stage companies. So I think this is such an interesting time for what was the traditional VC model of raise big fund, deploy over 2 years, raise next big fund, deploy over next 2 years, raise next big fund, etc. Because the question is why do companies need so much money in those big funds? And that's what's also interesting. If you notice that a lot of the bigger funds in the US have started to change their approach in how they're actually deploying capital through their funds, and they're basically giving themselves more flexibility in how they actually deploy, so that they can access the early stage opportunities. So today is such a random thing of talking about early stage VC right through to business succession, like businesses that have been around for 20 to 30 years, and then likewise, access to sort of property and yield. But I said, I suppose that's our job, and it's like, how do we make this unique for you so that you can access the type of opportunity that you're looking for at this stage of the game? So that sort of gives you a bit of a summary to how we've thought about the sort of building of this private capital event. and the opportunities that we want to provide you across this day. The day is absolutely jam-packed, and there is going to be one sort of disappointing note. One of my favorite people to have speak is actually Tim Trumper. Unfortunately, he just come back from Japan and currently has no voice. So unfortunately, I've invited him to now sort of speak at our Venture and Capital conference. So unfortunately, he won't be able to do his keynote today on AI. But I tell you, if you haven't checked out his book, go and check out his book. His book is called AI Game On. It will really give you an insight into the way some of the world's biggest companies are thinking about AI. And I know that a lot of people have these concerns. There was a report that came out about how team members are concerned about their jobs and all that sort of stuff. It's rightly so, because this employment aspect is something that I really sort of struggle with my own head in how I sort of think about it, because, you know, if you look it seems like twice a year. I thought it was going to be just the start of every year, but it seems like 2 times every year, all the largest tech companies go through an announcement of layoffs. Now, in Microsoft's last announcement of layoffs, they didn't even bother to announce that they were investing into AI. They just said they're announcing layoffs after announcing record profits. So you can see how internally in these companies, they're just consistently removing layers across middle management. And what's interesting is, one of the theses I have is that you can see that most companies, early stage businesses, and this is why I can't wait to hear what Georgina says from on the panel today, is that this product-led growth strategy that companies are now building, effectively, they're also going for the removal. You know, it's literally, you remember that book, The Death of the Salesman? You can see that this is now being targeted. Like, for the first time ever, you know, this is an area that sort of people are really targeting. So, you know, this is, you know, I'm pretty excited about today, as you can tell. We've got, and I'm going to go through some of the talks. I haven't even clicked on one slide yet. Obviously, we're going to have William Houston. William has come over from the US. He's an incredible guy. He's absolutely going to be bringing energy to the room. He's going to be introducing everyone to quantum mental analysis. Who's heard of quantum mental analysis before? Great. I hadn't either until I heard it from him. It's a really fascinating way in which he looks at how he deploys capital across hotel investments around the world and how they assess opportunities. Right, so William, himself has actually built and sold his own capital business, and now has got a specific focus in the hotel space. I'll turn my notifications off. Steve Baxter, he needs no introduction. If you think about warfare in general, innovation has played a massive role in the outcomes of wars in history. You know, one of my favorite stories was listening about how Leonardo da Vinci basically paid for, you know, what he would do is he would go to kings and he would sell, you know, his capacity to build them warfare, you know, weapons, you know, and then he would use that money to then go and experiment with, you know, doing the first sort of autopsies on humans to understand the human organism. But that's how he did it, is through, you know, basically innovation in warfare. And so he's going to be focused on that as far as what the opportunity sits in defense tech and innovation in defense tech specifically. And then Alan Hunter talking about the energy transition. You know, we've been working with Alan now for 5 years, and we've just watched him build an incredible sort of growth, high growth business. But it's because he's on the forefront of a trend that's taking place with, you know, in the B2C space as it comes to energy. So we'll be listening to him. And then Giles, you know, the majority of you would know Giles, you know, from his, you know, basically experience in debt. He's going to be the one that's talking about what is this opportunity in SME succession and the ability for investors to participate in that funding or be involved in that as an area. To me, that is probably one of the most exciting opportunities in the marketplace at the moment. So Giles is going to be talking about that. I've gone and done a breakdown of all the different sort of panel topics that we're going to be covering today. We've got some incredible panelists and speakers that are involved in all those different sessions, and it's very diverse, right? Especially the alternative investment trends session. I could not get more diverse in how we're approaching that from the different topics. And we've got some great companies that are presenting today as well. So first one I'm just going to give a quick mention to, coming over from WA. Basically got a Cura Asset Manager. They deliver high yields property syndicates with consistent 8+% annual returns. Refield got a great setup. You know, Ryan and his team, if you actually see their setup in the background, these guys count like Google, Facebook, and so forth as their clients. They've started expanding into Singapore already. Incredibly, you know, high energy entrepreneur. They're revolutionizing packaging with scalable, eco-friendly, reusable solutions, reducing plastic waste. What's important is they're doing it at a B2C focus, already, you know, getting close to that sort of 1 million in sort of ARR from a revenue perspective. So he's really kicking goals. As I mentioned, Dan from Pindara Partners is going to be talking about how he's sort of delivering strategic capital, you know, through flexible real estate investments, you know, strong, been there, done that experience, built and sold, Westbridge fund management, etc. Industrial properties being one of the sort of highest areas of interest from investors in our ecosystem. They're going to be showing how they're sort of providing investors with access to monthly returns and also capital growth as well. Vest Capital offers access to private credit, real estate backed opportunities and targeting 10%. Also, strong team with the experience in sort of scaling in this area. Enviro Invest, you know, sort of renowned team, you know, with once again that sort of been there, done that experience. They're allocating capital for lasting environmental impact. As I mentioned, William from Bay Street Hospitality is going to be presenting. Matthew, one of my favorite humans, is from Cosmo Innovations. He's going to be delivering award-winning affordable med tech and also consumer health solutions. It's actually a really highly focused beauty product that's got some of the attention of the world's largest sort of beauty manufacturers and distributors. He's also got a product that you can check out today. And then Bankstack. Bankstack's a great example of, you know, someone who runs their own family office and own VC fund. They've noticed an opportunity for themselves in that basically, you know, provides full stack infrastructure to disrupt the legacy infrastructure around payments and also e-commerce globally. You know, so really taking on an important area. So that's, you know, they'll be focused on that and also be on the panel session. NovaPep, you know, Jay's an incredibly experienced executive. Once again, specialty in taking companies out of taking IP out of universities, then sort of commercializing. He's developed peptide to treat sepsis and acute conditions with cytoprotective anti-inflammatory effects. I'm sure he'll make it simpler than what I did. New Orphan is targeting multiple sclerosis therapies through protective nerves and promoting repair. This technology actually come out from one of the I just forgot the I think it's out of Monash University in Melbourne. So these guys have secured the IP, got a fantastic team around them of specialists in sort of life science and are now going through the process. Varela delivers high yield projects through in-house expertise and exclusive access. And also they've vertically integrated all aspects of the actual process. Alex Bank, which many of you would know, these guys, what they're building as far as 100% digital retail bank to basically provide a scalable and deliverable offering. Said great team, really experienced guys in this background, obviously kicking some goals already. My Farm Investments, you know, basically providing direct access to farm opportunities in New Zealand with obviously potential for growth and also yield. iMoney providing unique access to a range of sort of exclusive and unique funds in this sort of early stage space. And I'll let Andrew can talk about sort of some of the unique opportunities that they've been able to position themselves to get access to. Memento Blockchain, they're building secure and compliant digital asset solutions to basically bring together the sort of new world of digital assets and also traditional finance, traditional and also decentralized finance. And Ocean is basically delivering strategic property finance solutions with end-to-end solutions for it, and have got a specific offering today for investors. Once again, team, like I think 15, 20 years experience in this space. And then also our sort of sponsor for today is Bybit. You know, Bybit's probably become known as one of the sort of bigger, I think there's sort of top 2, top 3 crypto exchanges. You know, they're basically providing now, sort of making it easy for investors that they've got crypto that basically want to get access to their crypto and spend it through their cards. They'll be, you know, providing the ability to access that sort of card offering so you can actually spend your crypto if you wish. So that's our lineup for today. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long introduction to go through all the different thematics and all the different companies that are sort of presenting today. I said we've done our best to stack the day with relevance and value, whether it be through the sessions or whether it be through the companies that are presenting. And the thing I always note is the founders and the people we're working with, I said, not only are they experienced, but they still work 24/7 every single day to build what they're doing and to create opportunities for you guys to participate in. Everything is inside the CapitalHQ app. You would have received an email this morning with all that. You can access the opportunities. You can actually find the agenda inside of there. Likewise, you can connect with the companies that you see featured. Obviously, they're also presenting in the room next door as well. And then the last thing, as I always say, my final part, the power of one conversation. Every single time this happens at one of our events, one conversation can make an incredible difference. It was one conversation that opened the door to us to take Australian companies to Singapore. We've been doing that for 11 years now. It was one introduction that allowed us to now start being able to take companies to Dubai. It's one introduction also that now has created the opportunity where, sorry, not yet, I built up. Actually, I'm going to go forward. There's one other opportunity, one introduction that also made this possible. So we're super excited to announce that we've now basically created a partnership to now assist with CapitalHQ in India, where we're going to be helping, not only we're going to be partnering with with Irfan and his team to actually not just run events in India, but also make it that trusted pathway for Australian companies that are looking to test their potential in India. If you've been sleeping on India and haven't checked out what the potential for that market is, go and have a look at Modi's 2030 vision for what they've been building for India and have an understanding of their transformation they've done over the last 5 years. If there's any country that's been winning so far in the trade wars, it has absolutely been India, doing deals with everyone. They've got a strategic vision which they're relentlessly building towards. And so we want to create that opportunity to now not only take companies to Singapore, London, Dubai, but also now to take them to India as well. And then lastly, I'll mention, whilst you guys are sitting here today, the rest of our database is getting let know that we're launching Venture and Capital 2025. That's going to be hosted on July 29th and 30th. It's actually going to be hosted in this venue. This will probably be up there with Emergence as far as the biggest event that we do this year. It will attract between 750 to 1,000 investors at that event. For the first time, we're actually doing it as a 2-day conference, right? And this is just simply because the amount of opportunities that are coming through, but also the potential that I see for not just the companies and the opportunities, but also from the investment side, is something so significant that I said, I want to sort of place the spotlight on it that it deserves. So there'll be a focus on the innovation side and there'll be a focus on the capital aspect. So Venture and Capital will be on July 29th and 30th, and it'll be hosted here at the Hilton. So ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever, I've actually finished my introduction within the time frame. So on that note, I'm going to introduce to our host for today. Please welcome Jay to the stage and enjoy Private Capital 2025.